introduce Benoit, who's a professor of political science in the University in Leuven, which again has some amazingly serendipitous connections with Ireland. We used to bring students over to the Irish College in Leuven. I know it's a different university, or it's a different campus, but in many ways, the history of Ireland was written in Leuven in the 17th century. So there is amazing historical connections between Ireland and Leuven, and it was enormously important in terms of the forging of national identities. And it's a really interesting even conversation that it would be fantastic for us to have at another stage around the documentation and what was left out and what was included in that period in terms of the annals of the Four Masters and the histories that were written by the Franciscans in Leuven. But that's not the purpose of the presentation here. That Benoit is going to talk to us about mixed methods research, and again, as a summer school, like our primary purpose is to support researchers and to support early careers researchers. Look at a range of different approaches that they might take to their research, respecting, I suppose, the range of different voices and the range of different ways of knowing. It's fantastic for us to have such an eminent speaker, and I'll hand over now, if that's okay, Benoit, and allow you to take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yes, Paul, I'm sharing also some slides. I hope you can see them.
We can see them. They're perfect.
Okay, perfect. So good morning or afternoon or good night or wherever you are. Indeed, there's lots of connection between Belgium and Ireland. Also, when I teach politics at DSAI Louvain, and there's a lot of interesting similarities and contrasts in current politics and society across Ireland and Belgium, which are conflictual societies in way, in different ways. Okay, but that's not the topic today. So I have prepared a short presentation around the connection of mixed and multi-method designs. I will clarify the different difference in development research, because I think there are some privileged connections, and I will especially stress some challenges and opportunities.
Sorry, you've muted there.
I'm back. Is okay now? Yes. All right. So here is my four-course menu for lunchtime here in Belgium. In short, where I speak from, then I will define mixed methods designs for those of you who are, especially who don't know, so we're not specialized on the topic because it's a moving field. Then I will make the link with development research, and then I will especially discuss some challenges and resources. And then I will present a large or an important, let's say, enterprise that I'm chairing, which is called MethodsNet, and which may give you some resources to go beyond this. Okay, where do I speak from? I do not have a slide from this. I'm not a development scholar. I'm a comparative political scientist, and most of my research has been done in the so-called global north or in Western Europe. But I've been working a lot on methods, especially around comparative methods and so-called QCA. QCA is in English a qualitative comparative analysis. It's a sort of a hybrid methodology in between qualitative and quantitative. And this has led me also to into the mixed methods, let's say, field. I've published mostly around methodology in the last 20 years or so. And I've been increasingly also involved in the last 20 years in teaching methods and organizing methods training events, first with the ECPR, especially. ECPR is a large umbrella organization for political science in Europe. And then the last 3 years with this new MethodsNet venture or enterprise. My link with development research, I do have some links. However, first, here locally at DSAI Louvain, we have a long tradition of development research. well, in the old times, of course, there were some colonial studies, right? Back in the old days. And then Louvain has always been a place of reflection from 1960s, 70s onwards, after, you know, the independence of the former Belgian colonies, a place where there's a lot of reflection and a lot of African fellow colleagues and researchers coming to Louvain. And so a lot of, you know, north-south exchanges between our African colleagues and ourselves. And I'm involved in these dialogues, especially around methodologies. And I've been also supporting or helping the Burundi's colleague in Burundi, the Great Lakes, to set up a PhD school in Burundi, a French language PhD school for the Great Lakes region, for East Congo and Burundi, and also a master's program around gender and society. And so I do have some connections over there. All right, so let's turn to the topic of mixed methods design, which is a very, very broad field, actually. For some reason, I cannot move my. Can I move this? Yep. Okay. This is a classical definition of a mixed method design or research. It's a research strategy that combines qualitative and quantitative procedures, and this could be data collection and/or data analysis. That's an encompassing definition. And this covers a whole set of different, let's say, protocols and approaches. And recently, there is an ongoing debate on the contrast between this label and multi-method research. Multi-method research, I argue with some fellow colleagues in a really useful textbook by Onwik Budzi and Johnson. I argue that multi-method is a sort of a subset of mixed method, in which you combine different qualitative tools or, right, different quantitative tools. You stay within one epistemology, if I may say so. So already there's two main families of designs here, but I'm going to focus on the mixed method one here. All right. So what are the let's say the boxes one should tick to claim that he or she is doing mixed method research is that you should indeed collect and analyze both, let's say, numeric data and non-numeric data. I'm being much broader here. Textual, narrative, also visual, anything else that is not numeric from the start. Secondly, one should integrate. There is some level of integration. So mixed method is not only sequencing things; it's try to have some sort of connection between the types of data in a sort of integrated design. Nonetheless, there's a big debate on the extent to which one may integrate, or whether one simply sequences different steps, actually. All right. So and then third and last but not least, one should organize this in a pre-planned design. Even though you may also use more emergent designs, it's actually better to plan the design in advance because it's very demanding. I'll come back to that. Now, there is a very big debate around mixed methods designs, both within this broad community and also beyond it, on the sheer possibility to combine qualitative and quantitative research. I would assume that many in the virtual room today, are more located on the qualitative case side of things, or case-oriented or critical scholars or interpretivist, and so on. If you take such a strong epistemological position, you might argue, or you may argue, perhaps rightly so, that it is actually impossible to combine with something very quantitative and very, let's say, positivist. And there is, of course, a huge debate around this. So in order to conduct mixed method research, somehow you have to have a certain mindset that you're willing to accept for different stages of your research, in a way, different epistemologies. And secondly, there must be some sort of added value of the design, that it is relevant. And usually the argument is, there is some background noise. Yeah, please cut the mics. Thank you. And the argument should be that the mixed method design brings some added value and typically enables you to address both, let's say, how questions of deep understanding and why questions, sort of causal questions. if I may say so, or correlational questions to frame it more quantitatively. Okay, these are broad points. And so summarizing mixed methods, according to Tedley, and really Tedley, there's an L missing, by the way, T-E-D-D-L-I-E. So the idea is that in a well-constructed mixed method design, you can simultaneously address both exploratory questions on emerging phenomena and confirmatory questions more based on theory and more established, let's say, facts. And then you can, of course, you can cross the research questions and you can produce better inference. You can also go both deep into cases, and you can also try to generalize in different parts of the project. And so, and also enables scholars with different views, different methods, potentially to collaborate. So mixed methods can be collaborative. And there's also some further arguments in another piece by Toshkov, 2016. I'm not providing all the details here. All right. So wrapping up about mixed methods, there is usually a quite a broad agreement on the following graph that you see here, in that basically that enables us to differentiate or distinguish three main types of mixed method designs. First, a conversion design, when the two phases are conducted independently. It means that basically what you do is that you analyze. It's the old idea of triangulation in a way. You conduct two analyses, one qualitative, one quantitative, more or less separately, and then you try to converge. You cross or triangulate the results. If they are linked in a better way, let's say in some way, then usually they are placed in a sequence. These are sequential designs, and it can start first with quantitative, or it can start with qualitative. That's a very different way to do research in a way, and therefore you have sequential exploratory designs. That's the basic distinction, and then there's of course multiple sub-distinctions. That's the summary of these three designs, in which I have highlighted in red the areas of, in a way, integration or dialogue or mixing, even though perhaps the term mixed is not the right one, because you actually don't mix like you put in the mixer. There are different stages. Usually it's more about sequencing and having some dialogue between different methods. Okay, that was a quick overview of some basic elements on building blocks of mixed method designs. Let me, to enable also time for discussion, let me discuss now why I believe there is a great fit, an obvious fit between mixed method designs and development research. Now, of course, development research is itself a broad field with very different traditions, as you know better than me. But I think that if I look at the empirical objects that one analyzes or addresses in the research, these are very diverse objects. And typically in a given project, you may analyze some phenomena like state structures that are quite established and recognized, and you may also analyze in the same project some very much emerging phenomena that are not so well tapped by the existing literature, because, as we all know, literature is still very much out there, away from the field. If I take the example of Africa that I know better, away from Africa. Those phenomena usually are nested, as are many social phenomena. And when there is nestedness, it means that the research object may be approached either at the micro or at the meso or at the macro level, and these are all relevant levels. And if each level is relevant, then perhaps there are different sub-questions, and then this could be building blocks for with separate research questions, by the way, and this may feed a mixed method design. This is, of course, perhaps not so much specific to development research, but I think it is especially the case in that domain. Now, theories abound and are contrasted and are disputed and contested, but perhaps more so in the current context also, of course, with the whole decolonizing debate and so on, that all of you are involved in, I assume, one way or the other. And so in such situation, one may, in a given project, approach theories from different ends. Then coming to more concrete things in a way, data issues are usually more challenging in some areas in the global south, if I may use this term, which perhaps some of you may not like, but if I compare it with, say, the European context, which I'm working a lot, some issues of data compilation are more difficult, more tricky, especially official data, quantitative data, and also sometimes access to the field is not so easy, and there is sometimes more cultural distance between the field researcher and the field as such. And so I think here, because of the limitations of both strategies, quantitative and quantitative in these in development research, it's really good to try to walk on two legs, qualitative and quantitative. Last but not least, development research is a field where people from different disciplines come together, demographers, sociologists, development scholars proper, but usually they come with a certain background, economists, political scientists, and you name it. And as I heard today, also from the arts and so on. And a mixed methods project can constitute potential for collaboration via a collaborative project, where each researcher brings his or her own, let's say, conceptual toolbox, but also his or her methods toolbox, and it's possible to bring these things together. Now, before I talk a bit about MethodsNet in short, and how this could support some of these mixed methods efforts for those of you who, and especially the younger researchers who want to engage in mixed methods. Now, one should not idealize mixed methods. These are very challenging. It's actually a more demanding type of research than vis-a-vis mono-method research. It requires more time, more resources in general. It requires also that if it's a one-person project, it requires qualifications on both sides, on different sides, basically in different techniques, both in terms of data collection, data analysis, which is not so easy to do. So therefore, perhaps best mixed method research is perhaps more collective, and there should be coherence in the project, which is not always easy to attain. Therefore, I usually advise my own students and fellow colleagues who are not so much into methods, who are not, let's say, methodologists. I really advise or advocate what I call modest mixed method design, where you have your own main toolbox that you feel very confident about, and then you can modestly expand or add a bit of taste of another methodology in some part of the project. For instance, I'm doing here in some projects in the Great Lakes with a PhD student, basically a case study of Burundi on whatever topic, and it's really qualitative and case-based, but there is also sort of a small survey alongside, and the survey brings something in addition to the qualitative data collection. So more like an extension of the main methodology, or a complement. And there's multiple resources to conduct solid mixed method designs. I cannot go through the whole list. That's not a full training here today. And there's plenty of courses around that. Now, talking about resources, let me conclude by telling you a few things about MethodsNet. And so I've begun a few contacts with some people at EADI and also the fellow Irish colleagues over email. So what is MethodsNet? And I will then conclude by providing, let's say, indicating two potential options for some of you to get engaged or to link up with us. So what is MethodsNet? It was launched only 3 years ago, a bit less than 3 years ago, and it's an association, first network, becoming an association, which aims to bring together methodologists from all across the human sciences, broadly defined. This includes, this goes as far as medicine, right? Everything has to do with human beings, not only social sciences. And the whole ambition is to bring these experts together and facilitate the access of their expertise to researchers. So both facilitate methods development and facilitate transfer and access to users. And also fostering pluralism, which I think is of paramount importance in our fields today, because increasingly methods are segmented and separate and seen as being opposed. So we have this kind of intellectual agenda. Well, pluralism, dialogue, equity is very important for us. We're not for profit. It's important to mention as well. We've launched, we scaled up MethodNet as a global association a few months ago, only in February. And we are providing or proposing a membership scheme also for students. And we are beginning to partner up with institutions. Hopefully, we'll partner up also with EADI in particular. And we are also building up an institution, our own association. Shortly, we'll be developing intranet MethodsNet communities for our members. This will be sometime later this year, probably by November. And we are driving some major initiatives. One of them, I'll come back to it right afterwards, in a couple of minutes, to conclude, is the African Methods Excellence Initiative. And then also sort of an umbrella network for all our activities, which we call MethodNet Academy. We are already organizing, we've started in 2022, a summer school in which, by the way, we offer 2 or 3 courses that have to do with mixed methods. It's now too late to register for the next one, or maybe you might want to try. It's in the Netherlands, Nijmegen, Netherlands, in 2 weeks' time. To conclude, last but not least, we're going to have 3 launch events, official launch events of MethodsNet at my place at Louvain-la-Neuve. That's the Francophone side. Our institution is Francophone, but of course fully, internationalized. So we use English as a lingua franca for the event. And we very much welcome participants from all over, not only from Europe. And there's a deadline for proposals by 20th June, so it's still workable for some of you. 3 events. One of them is more about methods teaching, is bringing together methods pedagogue. And we will have some people coming from Africa in particular, also, and also African scholars based in Europe will join this, and this will also enable us to launch officially the Africa Methods Excellence Initiative. Secondly, a conference, a classical conference, where both methods experts can discuss about their work in progress, but also methods users, typically PhD students and so on, or so more advanced, can get feedback on their work in progress pieces. So classical papers, but you get feedback on the methods aspect. And third, and not least, what we call methods innovation development workshops. We envisage, we're preparing a work. One of these will be perhaps 8 or 10 parallel workshops with specialized communities, and we most likely offer a workshop around methods developments in and for and by the Global South. To conclude, last slide, and then we have a bit of time to chat. Certainly, the Africa Methods Initiative will be launched later this year. What is the whole idea? The whole idea, this is for Sub-Saharan Africa, is being jointly developed by MethodsNet, multiple partners in the north and the south, in Africa in particular. And the idea is to help support the local capacity of African PhD researchers and the local existing structures, including the teaching staff, and increase the local capacity so that African PhD researchers find resources locally in their home institutions. And we've chosen, together with the fellow colleagues, to develop 3 regional PhD level master schools that will take place at Witwatersrand University in South Africa, for the whole of Southern Africa, for East Africa in Arusha, and for West Africa in Dakar. This one will be mostly French language. And the whole idea is to offer a brand, let's say, a batch of courses, quite diverse, including mixed methods, with teaching tandems, North and South scholars. It's kind of an ambitious project. We're working on it right now. So if some of you want to be involved, very welcome. And we'll also most likely develop some other activities, such as local PhD level teaching capacity development locally. And last but not least, I think that was the right way to conclude today's discussion. We do have a deep preoccupation for balanced partnership. because there is a long track record of a different, let's say, perspective in the last 30, 40 years in so-called what we call in French cooperation for development or academic development. And now the things are shifting. We want to be agile setters in the field alongside and together with our African fellow colleagues. Though, of course, decolonization is an agenda. It's not so easy for all of us. It requires some intellectual, let's say, effort, but we are very much into it. All right, there it is. This was my quick, very broad travel through these big points.
Well, I am not going to try to summarize because I think the presentation was so clear and succinct, it needs no summary. It was very, very insightful, very topical, and very on message in terms of the type of thing that we in the DSAI are really keen on presenting to students and prospective students around their research and around mixed methods. I think the idea of the methods net is fantastic, and there's a couple of comments that have come in while you were speaking, Professor Rihoux. So rather than me take any time, I'd really maybe like to call on participants to ask any questions or any responses. If Genevieve were comfortable speaking, I'd really like if you could share some of the remarks you made, if you could maybe address them directly to the group, if you were happy to do so.
Yes, I'm happy to do so. Hi, everyone. I wish I could tell you hi in Irish language, but I'm not able. But I acknowledge that many people here speak various languages and come from various communities. So yeah, I work for the International Development Research Center. It's a Canadian organization, and I fund researchers from across the globe, and especially in low and middle income countries. And I really just would like to applaud and salute this initiative from Benoit and the MethodsNet network for supporting local researchers in developing their own methods and developing skills to be better. To be better in research, but also I hope that this will lead to African researchers and local researchers to be able to develop their own epistemologies and to rely on their own local and traditional knowledges to develop their own methods. So I hope that this network that is aimed at strengthening those capacities will lead to a shift from, this North-South cooperation to a Southern-based epistemology of research and methods. And I could speak about my PhD personal experience, but just to say that I really believe that mixed methods are not only useful, but they are essential to bring a more comprehensive understanding of any topic. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much for this very insightful reflection and presentation.
Thank you, Genevieve. I'll open it, Benoit, if you want to respond, or if anybody else has any other questions.
Yes, for me, this was more like a rejoinder. So thanks a lot for this, Genevieve. I did not see really a question. So yeah, we agree, we're aligned.
Brilliant. Petronella.
Hi, I also want to mainly applaud the work of MethodsNet and especially the efforts of bringing kind of good methodological research knowledge to students who are studying in institutions in low and middle income countries. And I think it kind of sometimes when you are conducting research or collaborating with students who are studying in low middle income countries or low income countries especially, you find that kind of same kind of coloniality sometimes, of knowledge within kind of the academic system very much what Sharanya was also talking about. Sometimes you find that an elite within a country controls the resources, controls the university, controls what's been taught there. And also, you know, what I've come across a lot is kind of researchers who just because they don't receive much of a salary, don't have a chance to spend a lot of time teaching their students, but instead have to go off and take on other jobs, and you really find that the quality of you know, of the time and effort that they can put into you know, devoting to their students really suffers. So I think it's great to see that, you know, that sort of this kind of effort's been made. I think there's fantastic talent in a lot of countries, but sometimes students not receiving the right support because there just aren't the resources for it is, you know, needs to be acknowledged. And it's great that some of these supports are coming in a very, you know, in a very supportive manner. Thanks.
Yes, perhaps. Thanks a lot, Piernella. So this is exactly my own experience in Burundi, where there are, let's see, it's a multi-level thing, right? Where individually the fellow colleagues, those who are tenured, right, operate in quite difficult conditions, and especially the critical stage is the early career academics, scholars. They're immersed in multiple other tasks, and they simply cannot devote time and resources to develop pedagogical skills, especially for advanced training. Talking about, you know, advanced MA and of course not to mention PhD. That's kind of a crucial link that is difficult to mend later on, because it's like it's a systemic logic. On the positive side of things, what I've observed is that young researchers on the ground are very inventive and entrepreneurial in their work. And so if you provide them with the right toolbox locally, provide them with tutoring, physically on the ground or also perhaps over distance, and if you do a sort of a joint supervision perhaps for the research, also across Africa, we've done a few like this between Burundi and Burkina Faso or Senegal, right? Then you have sort of a better support for the researcher. So there's need for inventivity. I just wanted also to flag exactly, I mean, the point you raise, Piernella, is the issue of, let's say, structural imbalances or systemic imbalances that go way beyond the scholarly field, by the way, right? And I wrote a small piece with my fellow colleague Charles Kabugiri from Burundi exactly on that. How can you collaborate in a balanced manner between, say, a Belgian and a Burundese university, and between a Belgian or a Burundese colleague who have technically the same technical, let's say, we as scholars have the same qualifications, but we don't operate in the same environment. And then the risk is to remain in a logic of in like the old times logic, it's in French assistance, right? Helping out, supporting, but not collaborating, if I may say.
Great, thanks, Benoit.
Thank you.
Nisha, you were hand up.
Yeah, I can't help but to join in here. Thanks, Professor Rihoux. I know, you know, I am on a panel for your October conference. You probably, I don't know whether you know that as of now or not, but I was just thinking, you know, in terms of research methods or lacking the expertise, or, you know, having, you know, lecturing here in Ireland for the last, you know, many years, or, you know, in different capacities, I find our students also need the research methods tools, and probably, which is a great way of, you know, I think that's where MethodsNet can help, you know, students even in the global north. And it's not just about reaching out to low and middle income countries, and kind of, I'm hoping that we learn from them as well, because that is what the whole thing is about, you know, creative arts based, or autoethnographies, or bringing in poetry or other ways of learning theater of the oppressed and all. And I'm hoping it's going to be a two-way exchange. instead of capacity building, as in building our own capacities here, and how to learn from the ways people in other worlds do research. And I'm hoping that's what we are going to get. I'm looking forward to the October conference and participating in that in person. So I'm just wondering what is it that you or others may have learned from engaging with Global South scholars. We have somebody in the afternoon today presenting his work also, and we've heard Sharanya and we've heard Martina Cleary also. And how do we link into all of that? Any response would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple points in your, there's many sub-questions in your question, Nita. Thanks a lot, and warm welcome to Louvain-la-Neuve later this year. I think in the global north, in Europe in particular, methods training is kind of crucial for two reasons. First is because methods are part of are one pillar of science. So science is not only about good theories, right, and good ideas and good concepts. It's also about protocols and craft, and that's the methodology, right? So that's why it's crucial, especially at the PhD level, to offer like a strong training. And I think what I've learned from our experience is that it's good to find a good way to how should I say, to find the right balance, or to share the work, if I may say, between the local training, like in given institutions, let's say nationally or regionally, perhaps, and then larger events that we do, like MethodsNet, for the whole of Greater Europe and globally. And what you can do with such European or broader events, you can have some sort of critical mass, where you would bring over, maybe for a typical course, 15 or 20 researchers with work in progress, and they can network, and and it brings something else in addition to what you could get locally. Now, what have I learned locally from the way research is being done in Central Africa, which is the place I know better, East Congo and Burundi? What I've learned is that, especially I'm working a lot on data collection in my field, interview methodology, focus group methodology, and multi-data case studies. That's kind of my area of expertise. And I always tell my researchers here in Belgium or in Europe, that data, I mean, societal data is always messy to some extent. It is always there's always some limitations in your data. Well, in Burundi and in East Congo, of course, due to the very difficult local context, simply of physical insecurity and so on, and very difficult situation in terms of reporting, official reporting of for official data. These issues of data are simply even more to be stressed in a way, and therefore the researchers are in a way more inventive. And for instance, I'm right now discussing with colleagues in North America, in anthropologists, who also do surveys, interestingly, like quantitative surveys. It's called the CAMP, C-A-M-P group. These are cultural anthropologists, and together with African colleagues, they work on very innovative way to do sampling on the ground, sampling in difficult places. How can you actually make a representative sample within the population of say people in a refugee camp, or in a city with hardly any a good social demographic data by the city authorities and so on? How do you do that? And there's great ways you can do that, and you can also replicate such tools in other places, say in the Brussels region. In the Brussels region, there are some more difficult places to do surveys. We can learn from that. And I can give you multiple other examples more on the qualitative side of things you can invent on the ground facing difficulties that we can learn in the north. And a third interesting thing is my fellow colleague Anne Ansoms is doing this. I'm going to give you her names, and she will be hopefully also there at the launch event. Anne Ansoms, together with some fellow colleagues in Congo, East Congo and Rwanda and Burundi, she uses theater plays and these kind of methodologies to have the local population with very low schooling, right, intervene and talk about politics and the economy and so on, right? And such methodologies that have been developed there locally can also be done here in the north. So we hope that in some of the workshops, such innovations or co-produced innovations, here it's like North and South in East Congo, Burundi, can teach something to the people up here in Europe.
Yes, thanks. I have been on a panel with Ansom in the past and in ADI one. And thanks. Yeah, co-creation of knowledge is the way to go forward. Thank you so much.
I think that's a really good one. It's really because we have a forum theatre press workshop tomorrow again, and looking at that method. Could I just ask, and there's no other hands raised, so I'm just going to finish with one question, if that's okay. It emerged from Sharanya's talk this morning, and she suggested that maybe academics and PhD supervisors would consider Indigenous elders as co-supervisors. Could I just get a response from you? I know it's taken a little bit out of context, but I thought it was a really interesting suggestion. Would this be something you might consider?
That's a very interesting idea. I think if I take a step back, from me, my reply, let's say my more analytic reply would be to say, what is an expert? Who is a legitimate expert in whatever field? And so in our, let's say at my university in Louvain-la-Neuve, we usually say that people who need to be in a PhD jury need to hold a PhD, right? But there are some exceptions, like in management research, this could be CEO of a large company could join the jury even without a PhD because he's like a topical expert. So along the same lines, an elder could be a topical expert. Simply so, I would say.
I think it is a really, I think it's
at least that's one way I would approach it.
Absolutely, I think it's opened up a really interesting basis for conversation, even in terms of maybe our own work and our own supervision of students and how we recruit supervisors. But that's really fantastic. I think there's a huge amount. I do think, Benoit, if we could get the links to the various events that you have, I know there's some of them on the ship, but that we would share them with participants and maybe more broadly, because I think it's something that members of DSAI would be really interested in getting involved in the MethodsNet initiative.
Maybe 2 points. Let me, on the one hand, about the links, let me send you we just sent out a newsletter with the links. I'm going to send it back to you. I'm in the core group I was in touch with. Then you can forward this to the group.
Great.
And about the one tiny thing about the elders as experts. Nonetheless, there is a pitfall, of course, which is the sort of communication and language and outputs. To gather information, get feedback, it is possible to get a lot from the elders. Nonetheless, if they are not used to, let's say, for instance, reading manuscripts or whatever else, then there is the issue of communication. Which mode of communication, especially at the stage of evaluation? So should the elder be an advisor and or an evaluator? So I would look at the process, perhaps, and differentiate roles in the PhD, if it's about PhDs, in the process.
Absolutely. I see Catherine. Catherine, you have a question, and you can actually wrap up rather than me wrapping up this session, if that's okay. We can finish on this. You're on mute, I think.
I can try to read your lips, but it's more difficult.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Benoit. I suppose, yes, maybe I could wrap up with a comment, which might be, what is research for? Is it just to publish papers? Is it just to add to our store of academic knowledge? Or is it a tool of empowerment for people, particularly for women and for Indigenous people? And if we accept that there has to be an element of empowerment, if we're not just doing extractive, colonialist research, then we probably have to look at the kind of methods that we're using as well. So I was just wondering if we can consider the kinds of methodologies that might serve as an empowering tool for people, and that have been, researched, rather than they becoming the researcher of their own process of development.
Yes, I follow you. I take this as a reflection. I fully agree. I also reply in the chat about some of the points.
Okay.
That's great, and we can finish on that. I think we've had a fantastic morning. It's worked really well. I have to really just reiterate from everybody here our thanks to all of the speakers, and for your time, for your expertise, for your consideration of the topic, and for the efficient way in which you delivered the talks. We have a break now until 1:30, so we've more or less an hour, and we have some really interesting speakers coming on in the afternoon, and the opportunity to discuss at 3:30, between 3:30 and 4:30. And I think while we have certain questions that we can raise, I think the small group discussions would be an opportunity for us to develop some of the themes that have emerged, and maybe some opportunities to talk with people directly and question people directly, maybe about some of the inputs that we've had. So unless there's any other points that people want to make, we might just sign off at this point and log back on at 1:30. So just to finally finish with another word of thanks. Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for welcoming me today. Hope to be in touch with some of you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.